I never really got hurt. Yeah. Got banged up, but not bad. In real life, I think that being a dad is the most important job that there is in the world.
It was a hard decision for us, but that was the safest and best decision, not just for Bruce, but also for our 2 young girls.
When Bruce Willis's health declined, fans cried. But his family's tears might have had more to do with money than mourning.
The original girl dad.
One of the best.
And the thing he said most was, live it up.
The legendary actor left behind a $250 million fortune, and rumors say his will shocked everyone. Some were blessed, others were blindsided.
God knows I'm not that cool or slick in real life. Did I really say that on entertainment tonight? This is a tan from Hawaii.
Now, insiders whisper that Bruce's final gift tore his family apart. So let's get into the details. Bruce Willis, the rebel who turned pain into profit and silence into superstardom. The man who made bleeding look heroic and brokenness look like destiny. From a cramped New Jersey home where shouting matches drowned out the passing trains, Bruce clawed his way out of blue-collar chaos and built an empire worth over $250 million. No Hollywood godfather opened doors for him. He kicked them down himself, armed with nothing but raw charm, stubborn grit, and a refusal to die quietly.
And now Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis.
Oh no.
You are so cool.
He wasn't born into privilege. He earned it, one scar at a time. Every busted bone, every sleepless night, every smirk that masked exhaustion became part of his mythology. He wasn't just an actor. He was a one-man revolution against the polished perfection of Hollywood. He gave us Die Hard, and suddenly every man wanted to be John McClane. He gave us The Sixth Sense, and reminded the world that even ghosts can crave redemption. But behind those blockbusters was a man slowly breaking under the weight of his own legend.
I think we said everything we needed to say.
His empire glittered, a mansion sprawling over an acre in Beverly Hills, all glass and gold sunlight, a lakeside escape in Idaho, where he said he could finally breathe, garages lined with Rolls Royces, Porsches, and Escalades, the trophies of a man who ran from himself at 120 miles an hour. For every $1 million paycheck, there was a sleepless night. For every red carpet smile, a private collapse. The unstoppable Bruce Willis was quietly unraveling, worn down by fame, by work, by the merciless demand to always be the hero.
You know, you've had so much success playing.
Almost too much.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what it's like. Shut up.
Because this story isn't about money, it's about the cost of becoming a myth. The cameras worshipped him, but behind the lens was a man bleeding out in silence. He played tough guys on screen while quietly losing the fight off it. And now, as his family guards what's left of that towering legacy, the world can't help but wonder, how much of Bruce Willis did Hollywood take before he finally broke? If Bruce Willis ever made you believe in courage, if his grit on screen ever gave you strength when life felt too heavy, then hit that heart. Because this man didn't just act out battles, he lived them.
The exact quote, live it up every moment, every day. It'll be over in a ginger snap.
Yes, can be.
It's almost impossible to believe that the same man who saved the world on screen once came from a house he couldn't even save himself from. His story didn't begin with red carpets or movie lights. It began in the dim, flickering shadows of a crumbling home. Born on March 19, 1955 in Idar Oberstein, West Germany, Bruce entered a world still scarred by war. His father, David, was an American soldier carrying ghosts he never named. His mother, Marlene, was a young German woman trying to patch together love with scraps of post-war hope. They were broke, restless, and constantly standing on the edge of collapse. Some nights, the cold seeped through the cracks in their thin walls and wrapped around Bruce like a cruel reminder of what they didn't have. He'd hear his mother cry quietly in the kitchen, the scrape of her spoon against an empty pot becoming the soundtrack of his earliest memories.
Think about, gosh, I hope they like me now. I just don't care anymore. My career moves on and I move forward and I get to do what...
In 1957, when Bruce was just 2, the family packed up and crossed the Atlantic, chasing the American dream. But the dream didn't chase them back. In Carneys Point, New Jersey, their new home wasn't much different. Peeling wallpaper, humming factory air, and a constant ache of bills they couldn't pay. His father's drinking grew worse, his temper sharper, until finally the marriage shattered. The day his father left, Bruce didn't didn't cry. He just watched the taillights disappear into the night, the silence afterward louder than any slammed door. As the eldest of 4, he became the reluctant protector, the kid who tried to turn fear into laughter, chaos into calm. When the yelling downstairs got too hard to bear, he'd cover his little brother's ears and whisper, "It's okay."
I don't believe that anything that gets said about films when they come out really has any meaning or longevity anyway. It's only 10, 15 years down the road.
And maybe that's where the hero in him was born, not in Hollywood, but in a small, cold house where a scared boy learned to be strong long before the cameras ever rolled. He didn't believe it when he said, "It's okay," but somehow the lie gave him strength. What he couldn't protect himself from was the silence inside his own mouth. Bruce Willis didn't just stutter, he battled his own voice. Every sentence felt like walking barefoot across broken glass. "It felt like my mouth was full of cement," he once said. And one day, standing in front of his class, trying to say his own name, he froze. The laughter that followed didn't just echo, it branded him. From that day on, the kids had a name for him, Buck Buck. A cruel nickname that clung to him like a shadow, invisible but cutting deep.
David! Could I have a minute of your time, please?
Take 2, they're small.
He stopped trying to speak. Words became landmines. The humiliation built walls higher than any Hollywood set he'd ever walk onto. Behind those walls, anger started to grow. He started fighting anyone, everyone, because it was easier to be feared than mocked. He skipped class, mouthed off to teachers, and drifted into trouble. By 19, he found himself staring down a version of himself he didn't recognize, the kind of kid people already gave up on. That moment, that mirror reflection, was a wake-up call. Beneath the rebellion was a boy clawing for respect, desperate to prove he was more than the noise of a broken home.
Over there were schools being reopened and the power being turned back on and hospitals being reopened and built. And
Dinner back then felt like a miracle, but destiny had a strange sense of timing. At 17, he stepped onto the stage of his high school auditorium. Trembling, terrified, still half the kid everyone called Buck Buck. Then something impossible happened. The second the lights hit him, the stutter vanished, gone, like it had never existed. Words poured out smooth, alive, and full of fire. For the first time, Bruce wasn't fighting to speak. He was commanding the room. "That stutter was my first enemy," he'd say years later, "and acting was how I beat it." The applause that night didn't just sound good, it freed him. For a boy who had lived his life on mute, it was a kind of resurrection. Each performance that followed wasn't just about the craft. It was therapy, rebellion, revenge, and survival all at once.
you look back and you say, this film really holds up. This film doesn't hold up. You know, I mean, look at the films we look at. I look at old movies all the time. And that's what, you know.
The pain never disappeared. It just hardened into armor. The world would one day call Bruce Willis unbreakable. But the truth? He was only unbreakable because he'd been broken first. And through those cracks, the ones he once tried to hide, the light finally poured through. And so, the boy who once whispered just to survive began to speak for a living. But dreams, the real ones, aren't born in comfort. They're forged in noise, hunger, and the sleepless grind of desperation. For Bruce Willis, the world never stopped being a battlefield. It just changed its name. Now the war was called New York City. In 1973, at only 18 years old, Bruce packed a half-eaten sandwich, one worn-out suitcase, and the fading memory of a high school stage that once made him feel seen. He left New Jersey behind and stepped into a city that didn't care who he was or who he wanted to be.
You bartender, taking what jobs you could get, and there's a story, I don't know if it's just a legend, that you lived with 2 women. You lived with 2 women at the same time. Is that true?
It is true. You heard that?
He enrolled at Montclair State University to study drama, but the hunger in his stomach was louder than the lectures. "I didn't have time to wait for life to happen," he'd later say, so he dropped out, boarded a bus to Manhattan, and walked straight into the storm. What waited for him wasn't fame. It was frostbite, the kind of cold that doesn't just sting your skin, it whispers that you're nobody. His first winter in Hell's Kitchen was merciless. The radiator wheezed like an old man dying. The wallpaper peeled. The city felt alive, but cruel, shedding its skin while he struggled to keep his on. He slept in his coat, breath fogging the air. When rent ran out, he crashed on floors. Friends, acquaintances, anyone with a spare corner. "I wasn't homeless," he once said, "but I was close enough to smell what it felt like." Dinner was often nothing more than stale bread and tap water. Other nights, he'd stretch a single can of beans over 2 days. The hunger wasn't poetic. It was a bruise that wouldn't fade, a gnawing ache that reminded him he hadn't made it yet. His shoes were splitting, socks stiff with cold, and every step through the snow felt like punishment for daring to dream.
I was in a bar, and there were a couple friends of mine, and they came into the bar one night, and they had apparently been kicked out of the apartment they were in, and I needed some extra dough.
He worked whatever jobs he could grab, standing guard in empty, echoing factories that smelled of rust and regret, hauling crates until his palms bled, chauffeuring strangers under streetlights that looked more like interrogation lamps. But most nights, Bruce found himself behind a bar, the kind of place where dreams came to die under neon lights, the air thick with smoke, sweat, and loneliness, the laughter too loud, the music too harsh, the tips too small. Yet behind that counter, pouring drinks for the broken and the bold, something was happening. The bartender was learning to perform, not on stage, but in survival mode. Every story, every fake smile, every comeback line was another rehearsal. Because before Bruce Willis became Hollywood's unbreakable man, he first had to survive being invisible.
I get the feeling that you're a tough guy in real life, that you have a dark side and you like to occasionally rough it up a bit. Is that true?
It is true.
The scent of spilled beer followed him everywhere, clinging to his clothes, his skin, his soul, as if New York itself refused to let him go. There were mornings when Bruce Willis woke before dawn, shivering in the cold, standing in audition lines that wrapped around the block. Snow bit through his shoes, his headshot bent at the corners. His hope thinned with every hour. Most of the time, casting directors didn't even look up, just another face. Another next. He'd walk home on sore feet with a few coins in his pocket, the sound of them jangling like a cruel reminder. Payment for persistence, not success.
True. Don't you just want to just kick somebody's ass once in a while? You just want to whoop some ass and just haul off and just deck somebody? Come on.
Yeah. I think everybody
Just lay 'em out. Bang, there you go, right? But you can't,
But every no toughened him. Every slammed door became part of his armor. You learn to live with no, he later said. You wear it like armor. Behind the bar, he found a strange kind of stage. The man the world would one day know as Bruce Willis became Bruno. Louder, tougher, wilder. Bruno didn't stutter. Bruno cracked jokes, poured whiskey like courage, and played harmonica until the bar forgot its sorrow. It was a show every night. No lights, no applause, just survival disguised as charisma. Every night was practice, he'd say years later. I just didn't know what for. Yet behind the grin was still that kid from New Jersey, the one who once couldn't say his own name without shaking. Only now, his rhythm came from resilience, his confidence built on rejection and repetition. The cold, the hunger, the humiliation. They weren't just obstacles, they were chisels, sculpting him into something unbreakable.
I think it had more of an impact on every other actor's life in Hollywood than it did on mine. I had no idea that when Fox chose to pay me what they paid me for the first.
Those nights in freezing apartments with empty stomachs and overflowing ashtrays were more than a struggle. They were training. Training for the man who would one day save the world on screen. Because before he ever became a hero, he had to save himself. It didn't begin with applause. It began with silence. The tense kind that comes right before a storm, when destiny itself holds its breath. And for Bruce Willis, that storm finally broke in 1985, inside a cramped Los Angeles casting room where more than 3,000 actors had already failed. He was unshaven, under-rested, and wearing the kind of defiant grin that made producers nervous. But when he opened his mouth, the air changed. The room didn't just listen, it stopped.
In Hollywood, every film actor's salary jumped up to at least that price.
So they're all thanking you still?
None of them thanked me, ever.
The role of David Addison on Moonlighting wasn't written for him, but in that moment, it was rewritten because of him. It was waiting for him. That day, the bartender from New York finally ordered a drink from fate itself, and Hollywood never recovered. When Moonlighting hit the screen, television had never seen anything like Bruce Willis. He wasn't just acting, he was detonating. Fast-talking, razor-sharp, dangerously alive, the rebel who broke the fourth wall and made audiences feel like he was talking directly to them. That smirk, that spark, that quiet, I dare you energy. It was lightning caught on film.
First of all, I believe the chemistry is between the actors, and I could feel the temperature in the room when Bruce Willis walked in go up 10 degrees. So he was I could feel that, and I knew not to act on it, because as familiarity can breed contempt. So
Within months, Bruce went from broke to beloved, from pouring beers in smoky bars to holding both a Golden Globe and an Emmy in his hands. But fame, like fire, doesn't warm forever. It burns. The laughter on set masked exhaustion. The applause drowned out the quiet panic behind his grin. I had waited my whole life for this, he later said, and when it came, I didn't know how to breathe. Then came 1988, the year Bruce Willis stopped being a name and became a myth. Hollywood handed him a script called Die Hard, a movie so risky most A-listers ran from it. The studio doubted him. The critics mocked him. A sitcom guy as an action hero, they sneered. He doesn't have the muscles, just the mouth.
They made it, very safe for me, but, fear's in your mind, and it's what you tell yourself about how afraid you are.
But Bruce didn't blink. He took the script, strapped on the undershirt, and walked straight into cinematic history. On that set, under blinding lights and endless retakes, he didn't just play John McClane, he became him. He bled. He limped. He screamed through pain that didn't need special effects. Every bruise was real, every cut earned, because Die Hard wasn't about a superhero. It was about a man bleeding, crawling, and refusing to die. Bruce Willis didn't just save the hostages, he saved an entire genre and redefined what it meant to be a hero. Not perfect, not polished, but human. When Die Hard exploded into theaters, it didn't just shatter box office records. It blew up Hollywood's entire idea of what an action hero could be. Suddenly, muscles were out, attitude was in, and Bruce Willis, the wisecracking bartender turned TV star, became the $5 million man. A paycheck so outrageous in 1988 that even veteran A-listers were stunned. He'd gone from hustling tips in Jersey bars to cashing checks big enough to buy the blocks he used to bartend on.
It always adds to production value, and it is always more personally satisfying to see the actor doing the stunts.
But fame burns fast, and Hollywood has a cruel way of reminding its heroes that gravity always wins. The 1990s hit Bruce like a car crash in slow motion. Sure, Look Who's Talking and Death Becomes Her proved he could still charm an audience, but Hudson Hawk, his personal passion project, torched $65 million and earned barely a quarter of that back. Suddenly, the man who once saved Nakatomi Plaza couldn't even save his own career. The press turned vicious. Critics called him arrogant, out of touch, washed up. Color of Night was supposed to be his comeback. Instead, it lost $30 million and humiliated him with an infamous erotic thriller label that became a late-night punchline. For the first time since hustling pool in Hell's Kitchen, Bruce Willis was on the ropes, and Hollywood was ready to count him out.
But I'm still a romantic.
But then came 1994. Quentin Tarantino, the new rebel king of indie cinema, handed Bruce a lifeline disguised as a lowball offer. Pulp Fiction needed a broken man to play Butch the Boxer, and Willis, battered and bitter, fit the part too perfectly. He swallowed his ego, took the pay cut, and bet his fading name on an R-rated gamble. The result? A resurrection. Pulp Fiction didn't just revive his career. It reminded the world that Bruce Willis wasn't just an action star. He was a survivor. And when The Sixth Sense dropped 5 years later, he did what no one thought he could anymore. He shut up, slowed down, and acted his ass off. No wisecracks, no explosions, just raw, haunted silence. By the time audiences whispered, "I see dead people," Bruce Willis was already back from the dead himself. The performance shut every critic up. The Sixth Sense didn't just make money, it made history, hauling in $672 million worldwide. It was as if Hollywood itself stood up and said, "Sorry for doubting you." But even at the top, Bruce Willis wasn't living some champagne dream. The man worked like a machine, over 100 films in 4 decades. Behind the smirk and swagger was a guy running on fumes. Crew members whispered about him collapsing in his trailer between takes, drenched in sweat, muttering to himself, "Don't waste this."
Really hard. And I was like, no. And I went over and leaned in, and he kind of like did this, kind of like he might punch me. And he was like listening with side eye.
He wasn't nursing movie bruises. He was carrying the invisible ones, the kind you earn from being everyone's hero but your own. Every applause fades, he once said quietly. But the work, that's what stays. And the work did stay. By the early 2000s, his net worth had blasted past $250 million. Beverly Hills mansions, Idaho ranches, a name that guaranteed ticket sales. Bruce Willis wasn't just rich, he was bulletproof. At least that's how it looked from the outside. Every dollar had a scar. Every comeback carried the ghost of another night he almost quit. He didn't rise because he was the strongest. He rose because he refused to stay down. That's the real difference. Hollywood builds stars. Bruce Willis built endurance.
God knows I'm not that cool or slick in real life. Did I really say that on entertainment tonight? This is a tan from Hawaii.
But here's the cruelest twist. Life always writes the third act. The man who could outsmart terrorists, dodge bullets, and walk out of explosions somehow couldn't escape the slow-motion collapse of his own world. There were no rewrites for this one. No director yelling "cut" when things went too far. Bruce Willis had conquered Hollywood, but this time the fight wasn't for fame or fortune. It was for himself, and that's the battle even action heroes don't always win. The first crack in Bruce Willis's world didn't come from a bad movie or a fading paycheck. It came from something far more dangerous. Love. The kind that starts like fire and ends like smoke. They met in the late 1980s. Two rising stars orbiting the same Hollywood sun. Bruce Willis, still half bartender, half superstar after Moonlighting. And Demi Moore, all glow and gravity, a woman whose mere presence could quiet a room. Their connection was instant, reckless, magnetic, the kind of chemistry that doesn't just spark, it detonates.
All of my other relationships prepared me for this one.
By 1987, they were standing at the altar, hand in hand, hearts on fire, the cameras catching every perfect angle. To the outside world, they weren't just a couple. They were a fantasy, proof that two megastars could actually balance fame, fortune, and family without collapsing under the spotlight. Their home was chaos wrapped in joy. 3 daughters, Rumor, Scout, and Tallulah, running through the halls while Bruce, the action hero, turned into the world's softest dad. After 16-hour shoots, he'd drop his scripts, hit the floor, and let his girls climb all over him like he was indestructible. And for a while, he was. "That's when I'm really alive," he said once. "When I'm just dad." And for a moment, it looked like he'd cracked the code. Love, family, fame, all balanced perfectly. But Hollywood doesn't do happy endings without a catch. The machine never stops, and neither did they. His filming schedules bled into months away from home, while Demi's career was skyrocketing to another stratosphere. The laughter that once filled their mansion turned thin. The silences stretched.
What was the rush to tie the knot? I don't know. It didn't seem like there was no rush. We had sort of talked about it laughingly and just seemed okay.
Fame doesn't destroy love. It starves it slowly. One red carpet, one missed phone call at a time. It doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes, slowly, grain by grain, until even the strongest bond starts to come undone under the quiet weight of time and distance. By the late 90s, the whispers began, some printed in glossy tabloids, others whispered only in the dark corners of their own hearts. Could love really survive when two people lived on opposite sides of fame? When the cameras never stopped flashing and the world kept demanding more?
It's hard to see somebody who was so, vibrant and strong and so directed shift into this other parts of themselves.
In 2000, after 13 years of marriage, Bruce Willis and Demi Moore finally called it what it was: over. Hollywood gasped. The golden couple of the 90s, the blueprint for beauty and balance, was done. No scandal, no betrayal, no screaming headlines about affairs. Just two people worn thin by the impossible pace of success. When Bruce packed his things and walked out of their shared home, he later said the silence that followed was heavier than any line he'd ever forgotten on set. The house was still alive with ghosts, giggles that lingered in the hallways, the smell of syrup from long-gone pancake mornings, toys left in mid-play as if time had simply hit pause. He stopped outside his daughter's bedrooms, staring at the stillness, realizing the man who could save the world on screen couldn't save this moment from slipping away.
Don't have an expectation of them needing to be who they were or who you want them to be. And when you do that, I find that there is an incredible sweetness.
The hardest part, he said years later, voice low and unguarded, wasn't losing the marriage. It was losing the sound of their footsteps. To the public, Bruce and Demi's divorce was an ending. Another Hollywood love story burned out by fame. But to them, it became something quietly revolutionary. Instead of hate, they chose grace. Instead of headlines, they chose peace. Holidays, birthdays, even Christmas mornings, they shared them all, proving that sometimes love doesn't die, it just learns to live differently. "She's the mother of my children," Bruce once said. That doesn't end, and he meant it. Friends described their post-divorce relationship as oddly calm, almost too calm for Hollywood. No feuds, no PR spin, no public meltdowns, just two people bound by history and 3 daughters they both refused to let the industry chew up. Mutual respect became their new love language, and the unspoken rule was simple: the girls come first. But for Bruce, the quiet that followed was its own private war. On screen, he was the unbreakable man, stoic, fearless, always in control. Off-screen, he was a father living in the gaps between flights and film sets, trying to hold onto a family scattered by fame. He couldn't be there for every morning breakfast or every bedtime story. His life had become a loop of explosions, scripts, and premieres, while his daughters' childhoods unfolded through phone calls and blurry weekend snapshots.
And, it's really not up for a debate. Now I know that Bruce has the best care 100% of the time.
He never complained. He just worked harder, as if success could somehow fill the silence. But sometimes, between takes, the truth crept in. "You just hope you're giving them enough," he once admitted, even when you're not there. There were weekends when he'd fly home, bone-tired, only to sit across from his girls and realize how much had changed without him. A new haircut, a taller laugh, a moment he'd missed forever. Fame had handed him every dream he ever chased, but it had stolen time, the one currency he could never earn back.
What can make me feel this way?
Crew members sometimes caught him in his trailer, script in hand, eyes glazed, miles away. His body in Hollywood, his heart somewhere in Idaho, in a quiet house where 3 little girls were probably already asleep. After the divorce, reports hinted that Demi received a significant share of their estate, a split worth millions, but both kept the details locked down, protecting the only thing that still truly mattered: their family. Bruce held onto properties in Haley, Idaho, and Beverly Hills, but no mansion could drown out the echo of what he'd left behind.
In real life, I think that being a dad is the most important job that there is in the world.
But no division of wealth could ever measure the price of what he'd truly lost. For a man who had built an empire worth over $250 million, the one thing he couldn't buy was presence. "I was rich," Bruce once said, "but what I wanted most, money couldn't fix." And that's what makes his story hurt. Not because it's tragic, but because it's true. Bruce Willis had conquered Hollywood, built a fortune from nothing but charm, sweat, and grit. Yet even legends can't outpace the cost of being human. He never blamed fame, never blamed love, only time. "You learn," he reflected years later, "that sometimes love doesn't end. It just changes its address."
Well, they were running out of time. They had to choose someone, and it worked out.
Loads of food.
So when his daughters grew older, when laughter crept back into family dinners and holidays stopped feeling haunted, there was no bitterness left, only gratitude. Gratitude that love, against all odds, had survived in a world that breaks almost everything. "Being a father," he once said softly, "is my greatest role." And maybe that's the truest ending of all. Not the box office numbers or red carpets, but a man who, even after losing the home he built, never stopped fighting for the people inside it. Which is what makes the final chapter so hard to watch. Because now, the man who once ran barefoot across broken glass, who laughed in the face of danger, who turned pain into legend, is facing a battle no stunt double can save him from. The world has watched Bruce Willis bleed, sweat, fall, and rise again in over 100 films. But nothing, not fame, not fortune, not even the fierce will that built his empire, could prepare anyone, not even those who love him most, for the quiet, merciless war that found him in the end.
It seemed like a good idea, and something that my kids could go see and wouldn't have to cover their ears.
Those kids, a rumor.
By the late 2000s, Bruce Willis had already lived the kind of life that most people only fantasize about. The smirking hero, the haunted soul, the blue-collar warrior who made bravery look effortless. He was the Hollywood dream, personified. But somewhere between the scripts, the spotlights, and the silence of hotel rooms, something began to shift. It didn't crash down suddenly. It crept in, quiet and unseen. A forgotten line here, a momentary blank there, the kind of things you could excuse at first as fatigue, overwork, or age. But by 2020, at 65, the signs were harder to ignore. Bruce began appearing in smaller, low-budget films. Strange, almost jarring choices for a man who had once ruled box offices and red carpets. To the outside world, it looked like decline, but it wasn't that simple. Behind those choices was not desperation. It was defiance. Bruce didn't want to stop. Acting wasn't just a job. It was oxygen. He needed it to feel alive. Even as his memory began to betray him, he kept showing up, fighting, quietly, to hold on to the only thing that had ever made sense to him, the work. At first, the cracks were subtle. He'd fumble a line he'd practiced endlessly. He'd pause mid-scene, his eyes scanning the room, searching for words that just wouldn't come. On set, directors started to notice, and out of compassion, they adapted. Scenes were rewritten, dialogue was simplified, an earpiece was introduced, so someone off-camera could feed him his lines.
I'm really proud of all three of my daughters.
Will you encourage them to act if they want to?
I already have. Whatever they want to do, I would encourage them. I think that.
To the casual observer, it looked like carelessness, another aging star phoning it in. But to those who knew the truth, it was devastating. They weren't watching a career fade. They were watching a legend quietly slip away. He just seemed quieter, his wife Emma Hemming Willis later said. Less talkative, less engaged, as if he was drifting somewhere we couldn't follow. By 2021, the whispers in Hollywood grew louder. Scripts got shorter. His scenes fewer. Crews moved with an almost sacred gentleness around him, not out of pity, but out of love, because everyone on those sets understood they weren't just filming another movie. They were witnessing a farewell.
Who was very talkative and very engaged. He was just a little more quiet, and when the family would get together, he would kind of just melt a little bit.
He would still show up to set with that same half smile, the one that could light up an entire theater, that unmistakable Bruce Willis grin. But between takes, something in his eyes had changed. They'd glaze over, distant, as if he were searching for a thought that kept slipping just out of reach. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was like watching a man wrestle with shadows. Still fierce, still fighting, but losing ground inch by inch. Then came March 2022, the day the curtain finally fell. His family, always his quiet army, decided the truth needed to be told. Bruce Willis had been diagnosed with aphasia, a cruel condition that severs the connection between thought and language, robbing a person of their words, their comprehension, their ability to communicate the way they once did.
And so, we're there and we're watching Rumor, and, for me, I'm the youngest of, I call it the first litter.
Yes.
So I'm the youngest of the first litter, and so it's really important for me to...
For millions, the shock was seismic. The man whose voice had filled movie theaters for decades, the man who made Yippee-Ki-Yay echo through generations, was now struggling to form even the simplest sentence. It was as if Hollywood itself had gone quiet, the sound of Bruce Willis, that tough, unmistakable rhythm, slowly being swallowed by silence. But the story didn't stop there. In February 2023, his family shared the news everyone feared but no one wanted to face. The diagnosis had evolved. It wasn't just aphasia anymore. It was frontotemporal dementia, FTD, a degenerative disease that doesn't just take speech, but begins to dismantle everything that makes a person themselves. Movement, emotion, empathy, awareness. Bit by bit, it strips away the very essence of identity.
Well, I think it's twofold. I think on one hand, it's who we are as a family, but also it's really important for us to spread awareness about FTD.
The headlines called it tragic, but Emma Hemming Willis, his wife, his anchor, called it something else. A fight for presence. Because for Bruce, it was never about the fame, the money, or the legacy. It was always about showing up for the people he loved, for the work he believed in, for the life he refused to surrender, even as it slipped quietly away. He would still show up smiling, that same half grin that once lit entire theaters. But between takes, he sometimes drifted, eyes glassy, lost in thoughts no one could reach. It was like watching a man wrestle shadows, still fierce, still fighting, but losing ground, inch by inch. That's it for today. See you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.